everybody. Welcome to our seminar today. My name is Cesar Ruas. I'm with Autodesk, based here in Toronto, and I'll be talking to you about BIM 360 Team. Whenever we think about ourselves today and thinking about everybody that's involved within project delivery life cycles, it's not just about ourselves delivering the projects. We are here as typically designers, but for the most part, we have to facilitate the relationships across a number of different people. Now, some people might be doing projects specifically in their own locations, but overall, you might be leveraging people from across different worldwide organizations, maybe different professional organizations as well. And in this case here, it really kind of lends a question about how you work with those people today in trying to deliver projects. Now, some of the project tools that we're all familiar with today, including things like email, some of my customers point, we all live and breathe through network drives today. There's no doubt about that. And then to make those network drives more accessible, a lot of our clients are investing in what we call basic cloud storage. Basic cloud storage meaning, it is like a network drive, but it's in the cloud. It's accessible to other people outside of firewalls and so on. But within each of these siloed effects, it becomes very challenging to cross those silos during project delivery. And, with such a bold statement like this, why customers should replace all of these silos with BIM 360 Team, bold as it is, it really starts to have us think about our current systems and what the value proposition is for BIM 360 Team. Siloed, meaning data is not centralized, or it's difficult to find or track the information. Did I put my email to use whenever I had a question, or when I was sharing a file, or did I use a network drive? Or is the latest version from my network drive actually up on Dropbox? So these pieces tend to be either expensive or possibly complex like that. And tracking information was the example I just gave you a second ago. Is it expensive? In some cases, it's hard to gauge that unless you're really involved with the IT side of things. Sometimes it's a subjective expense that we don't know about. We don't really track every time that we're delayed by looking for data. So it's hard to track it, but it could be very subjective, meaning that, I spent all morning trying to find the file that I sent this guy last week, right? So it's a very intangible way of thinking about expense. The more tangible ways is how much network storage capacity do you need, and what was the PO cut for? The biggest, though, are these bullets over here. This is the real differentiator between the value that Team offers, that this seminar will describe, on how some of these other basic cloud storage facilitates, they don't facilitate design processes. There are never any kind of model viewing technologies inside of these basic cloud storage or even SharePoint sites, and definitely not email. And lastly, there's no design review. So, to even facilitate this area of my bullet points here, this is where more siloed types of software and applications get built into design offices across the US and Canada. So let's kind of break down the silos here, because these standard tools just don't resolve the pain. The miscommunication and lost information are one thing, but usually this kills the profit on anybody's bottom line. The design side of rework is actually trumped by the rework cost in the field. So when rework happens on the design side, there's actually chances for errors and omissions to take place, and those errors and omissions will actually be exponential if they're missed at the time of construction, because now all of a sudden there's all kinds of manpower are lost people waiting on the site, materials possibly being discarded and not used because of all of the errors and omissions that these standard tools and miscommunication evolved to. So this is all about the loss of money or euros or whatever your currency is. Rework delays means a loss of money and profitability. So that kind of sets the bar to where many of you are today. So let's take a look at something that I think can reduce the silos and increase the value that it brings to your project. So BIM 360 team, just to get everybody up to the same speed, this used to be called A360 team, and now we've done some renaming, so it's no longer A360 team. It is a purchasable subscription to which you can get it monthly, quarterly, or annually. It is also included into another product by Autodesk called Collaboration for Revit. It is the core underpinnings of Collaboration for Revit. But BIM 360 team by itself really can be, think of it as the entry point of more connection to your teams. And what I mean by that is I typically call this social project delivery. And as a social project delivery, think of it as social media, but more at the project level. You invite team members. You invite people to your project, and then you also remove people from your project when you no longer need their time and expertise. So you can have this project team in flux, always keeping the same people and adding new people as needed. And the benefit behind it is when those extra people go to team, you will actually get to see and view and possibly download, if you give them permission, some of your design files, some of your document files, some of your program files from the client, maybe some of the fabrication files for manufacturing processes. So team really can be that central resource. As far as connecting outcomes and connecting delivery, you'll also see within team the ability to have discussions, to hold calendar agenda items, holding people to task at those calendar items, and so on and so forth. So just highlighting, and everything's new to everybody today because that's why we're all in the seminar. What's new is everything. I just mentioned how team can be a project-centric design, social project delivery. But then we really start to get into some powerhouse tools for what team really offers when it comes time for communications. So for example, live review, fantastic feature of team, and essentially I am on this computer right here and I send a hyperlink over to Harry, and in that case there, Harry can open that hyperlink on his iPad or Android device or computer, and every time that I go ahead and spin this model, walk through it, mark it up with some of these basic tools down here, Harry on his iPad is going to be able to see this. So he'll have a visual representation of what I'm doing without the use of a GoToMeeting or Skype meeting format. We'll use our telephones to talk through any conversation, but all the visual fidelity of what I'm doing on the screen, Harry will see it firsthand. And we can invite more than one person. It can be a multitude of people, not just one person. Now, the bigger part of what team offers is right here, and including right here. So within the idea of 2D and 3D project delivery, whether you're doing full-on BIM or lonely BIM, 2D or 3D, this value prop is all about reducing duplication. So what that means is we typically all work in DWG or RVT files for the most part, right? So why would we want, unless we go back to our old systems of email and network servers and cloud storage, why create PDF files if we can do all markups, measurements, comments, printing, all from these file formats right here? So the old way, as I know many of you do today, you take your drawing and Revit files, you create a PDF set. And that PDF set is distributed to other colleagues. And then they use some kind of a PDF viewer to do redline and markup, or even just to view the files at the very rudimentary sense. What I'm telling you, though, is with Team, when you host and put up or upload DWG, Revit files specifically, let's just talk about those two. When you put those up on Team, you no longer need PDF files to go up there, because Team will expose and let any of your social project people view, edit, markup, or view, markup, measure, and if given permission, download that file for further editing. That is fantastic. And when, I have my partner who's in structural steel, and he updates his Revit file, Team will or drawing, Team will take care of versioning. So version 1 will become version 2, which will become version 3, and we will track all of these versions as we go through. And whatever was marked up on version 1, the markups will stay on version 1, and comments will be there as well. So design iteration, fast-moving paced projects, you now can make it more compliant and less error-prone when you just put the native files up there. Great moral of the story. And like I said, any format, virtually any format, especially on the 3D side, 2D or 3D, viewable through Team. And of course, because the Autodesk file formats are what Team shows best, this is where we'll expose all of those Revit sheets for you automatically. And then virtual editing device. And I've been with Autodesk for a very long time. I've seen many different applications and viewing technologies throughout my career. I have not seen a viewing application as good as Team when it comes to the user environment. And what I mean by that is, if I have some other old school people on the phone, what you would see on your desktop in the past was not necessarily how you would see it on your iPad in the past. But now with Team, you've got the tool sets and you've got the views, which are very, very, very similar and practically identical as far as the use case on either the iPhone or the iPad. And so we have specific apps for each of those operating systems. And for Android, just like your desktop, you would use Chrome or Firefox. I use a Surface tablet, I use Edge, I use Chrome. Doesn't really matter. I have the same use on any of those browsers. I found it very effective. But that's a great example right there. Now, we kind of shift gears a little bit. Many of you, well, of course, we are here talking about Team specifically, but this shows you an example of all of the 360 services as it relates to some core viewing services, as well as strategic project services. So just to kind of mention a few, A360 Viewer, if you didn't know it, if you just Google A360 Viewer from Autodesk, and it will be a website which you can drag and drop models on to do just that, viewing models. Free, easy to use, web-driven. A360 Drive is what everybody gets when they're on maintenance subscription, and you can even sign up your mother and father for an A360 Drive account and get 5 gigabytes of personal data storage. Limited is what you can do, but we have people using it because it's included within the maintenance subscription. And you would use it across the entire length of a project, those two viewers. Today, we're talking about Team. Team really fits into the segment quite nicely of design. And it's really targeted to fast, iterative design, comments, discussions, and the digital paper trail of versioning. That's where Team fits in as a separate purchase. For those of you that have tuned in to Microsol's Collaboration for Revit webinars, Collaboration for Revit includes BIM 360 Team. So think of it as this is a rudimentary first step into cloud collaboration, This is a more detailed step into cloud collaboration. So you can start simple, and then you can start simple, or you can go up to the next stage, which is also simple, but more detailed when it comes to the use of Revit directly from Team, because Revit can open up files directly from Team, which is the direct correlation leveraging collaboration for Revit. And then these real powerhouse tools, which are over here, they all fall under the BIM 360 services platform. So every one of these tools, docs, glue, layout, plan, field, these are all called BIM 360 tools. So BIM 360 docs, BIM 360 glue. So I won't get into these ones today, but these are a series of powerhouse tools over and above the other ones which you see on the screen. So we discussed A360, free. This is where BIM 360 Team fits in. Don't worry about Fusion Team. This is for our manufacturing counterparts. BIM 360 Team, very low cost of entry. Here, for example, when we're saying when you get a 1-year subscription, it's virtually $10 a month, $120 a year. Unlimited contributors. So really, you're paying, the money that you're paying for is for all of the features of which it gives, plus the 500 gigabytes of storage. Now, the nice thing and difference between Team and A360 is that Team, you can pool the data storage. So if you said, hey, Caesar, I want 2 terabytes of storage, and you would say, okay, we would say, or Microsol would say, okay, that means that you're going to buy 4 BIM 360 Teams. Now, in the promotion that we're having right now, you're getting 3 BIM 360 Team licenses. When you pool all that data together as 3 licenses of Team, that will give you, of course, 1.5 terabytes of data. Or you could leave, the way I describe these Team hubs, I think of them as bicycle wheels. And each bicycle wheel, so this would be 3 Team hubs, and each hub has a project coming off of it. So these are the projects based on one hub. So we could group these 2 hubs together, right? And we could have one master hub of 1.5 terabytes with project control, T1, T2, T3. One administrator for that hub can allocate administrators for each of the projects, project administrators, and then they can invite as many contributors as they wish. Very, very simple. Users can come online and be deactivated as well, but it's entirely up to you to keep those users running or not. And I thought I would share a couple of success stories if you want to look up who's using the 360 Team. This firm right here is in my own backyard in Toronto, Moriana Tsushima Architects. They themselves, and I chose them as a success story to talk about because many projects today are either joint ventures, integrated project deliveries, design build. In their case they're talking about geographically dispersed offices, or even themselves. They might be 2 separate offices of Moriana Tsushima, one in Toronto and maybe one in another city. This is where a team is allowing them to act as one design team because it's very centric. Take a look at that if you wish. And then this is another good example here where they are a structural engineering firm. And many structural engineering firms I find are much more advanced in some cases than other engineers because they might be tighter to the architects when it comes time to sharing Revit files. Many structural engineering firms are multidisciplinary, or sorry, not multidisciplinary, multi-use in their technology. They might have AutoCAD and Revit. So this is where they're using the Team site to keep track of their DWGs and their Revit files, on top of Microsoft documents and Excel spreadsheets. For them, and this is what I'd really like you to remember and take back with you, if you're a project manager, don't necessarily use Revit or AutoCAD. Maybe you're an engineer and you just do analysis, or you're a project engineer and you go out and site. This is all about accessing the data. accessing it, meaning you don't have to download it to your computer to take it with you to the site. As long as you've got an internet connection, you can use your phone or iPad, or just use your phone with a cell connection to access the files that you want to see. And then that way there, you're saving less time going back and forth. And then even the field people, you can give them just viewing permission of some of the files so that they can help themselves rather than always giving you some kind of a request for information. This is just in case you want to learn how to spell Autodesk. So let's tab over to some of the great things that I really want to share with you on Team. So taking a look at the insight of Team and the user interface, this is where our first glance at Team is showing us the thumbnail view. It's also telling us right here at the top, we're on one hub. This one hub is encompassing 3 projects. You can see the creators of these projects over here. We'll dig into this hospital project in a second, but let's just look at over here on the activity side. So we'll have this activity pane, which will be historical in nature. It'll tell us who's been doing what. It will include some thumbnail images of what's been taking place within the entire hub itself. So this is within the entire hub of these 3 projects. So for example, here you can see December 5th, Caesar updated an Excel spreadsheet, put up a document file, we put up a Revit file here. Oh, we had somebody called Merck join the project. And just to let you know, I put a file up there which was, pretty big. It was 1 gigabyte. Zip file, uploaded it. So just remember, there's no limitations. There's no fixed limitations that we put on Team for file size, uploads, or downloads. You should be able to feel comfortable to put virtually anything up there. Now moving forward, whenever I dig into this project, I'm going to also show you the way to control some of the activities that take place. So the activities, we can be alerted on the details or the activities taking place in the project. So for example, do you want to follow this project? So for my structural engineer, at some point when we're trying to do closeout, they might want to unfollow this project to get it off their to get it off their screen. Or when they start the project, they might want to pin it to one of their home pages. Now, as far as the email notifications that I received for the project and that you would receive as well, clicking on your icon at the top here and you dig into the settings of your site, this is where you'll have a few control points to really take care of as you get to learn Team. Number 1, if you have an A360 Drive account, you can show it, and when you click on this little blue arrow right here, it will show the A360 Drive account along with your Team account. And I'll talk about how these two can share files in a second. These are all the hubs to which I'm associated. So you might be an architect, but you might have a structural engineer that invites you to their hub. And that's okay. And then you can set defaults to which hub you'd like to start out in the morning. And here's the magic button and these magic check boxes to which you can choose to turn off when you become more and more used to Team. At first, I leave these on because whenever you can see right here, in a discussion, if anybody types in the @ symbol, and they say @Caesar Ruest, it will actually highlight me and send me a notification into my email every time they want to talk about something to me. So anytime you see is an opportunity to receive emails. The posts and such, the calendar post, in that case there, you'll automatically get these emails because everybody within the project gets emailed. Only the administrators of the projects receive the join requests and profile updates. So you'll want to turn these off at some point, because here's an example of what what it looks like. So just getting prepared for today's session, these were some of the email invites that I created within Team, and it shows up inside my inbox. And of course, I can create a filter here to put it into its own folder. But why receive email when you really don't need to? That's the magic utopia. But just to show you the nice integration the Team has with email, and this could be email from Outlook, and I'll show you Gmail in a second. But there was a calendar invitation. It said, hey, we're doing a progress set completion. It starts December 5th and it ends, hopefully it ends December 8th. And it better be in your office. So it sends out the calendar invitation. You would go ahead and open this up, and this would be saved into your Outlook calendar. And the same thing happens with Gmail. So I've got my Gmail open right here. I've got my invitation on my calendar, call for a ride. It's an event that we're having, and I would add this to my Google Calendar in the same manner. So nice integration there, but the settings, turn off those notifications at some point that you really want to do. It's what I would recommend. Now, the data tab is really what we're looking at here when we look at these thumbnails. And the thumbnails can come into a list view as well, which is more chronological. And you can sort by clicking on name or the type or the last updated file. We'll come back to this in a second. The calendar items, just to show you that it's nice to be able to create calendar items. Store planning meeting, you can see who organized this. You can see the date in which it was organized. Really quite straightforward. So let's say, for example, starting on this date, the 7th, or actually we're on the 9th here, so let's start on the 9th. Let's expand this, and we're going to say design and review. Starts on this date, and it's going to be later on this afternoon, and it's going to end at 2:15 here. And the nice thing about the calendar invitations, if you put in a hyperlink, like a Google map or something like that, if you put in this hyperlink here, when it lands in my inbox, in my Outlook or Gmail or whatever the case is, this will show up as a hyperlink that you just click. And you can find the map to which the meeting will be located. So hyperlinks work really good within those calendar items. This is the way it works. It's just that simple, and pretty much anybody that's on the team can make calendar items. So this is really going to be your one-stop shop for seeing. Now for discussions, the tab over here, this is more about some design decision and dialogue, deeper dialogues regarding the project. So let's break this down into some users out there today. So Revit users. We might have the people they're heads down using Revit or heads down using AutoCAD. You might have some questions like, hey, what's the layer standards that we're going to be using? Or hey, inside of Revit, what families are we using for the doors? So those quick questions and comments, you could use the discussion, but there might be some more need to show that right on the drawings themselves, or maybe that's part of a wiki that you build. So starting a discussion, this gets sent out to everybody. You can be more specific to people within your organization, like, hey, Caesar, what's the percentage completion of this drawing set? And then when you're replying to this, blah, 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 and you post this to the discussion, it starts creating a thread for you. And it's up to you as a group. Do you want to start deleting this and cleaning up some of these discussion threads? Because sometimes they're not relevant, but sometimes they're design decisions that have to be left and managed by other people to delete. This is entirely up to you. Coming down the thread here, this is where I'm going to start to invite new project members all together. The View and Manage Members tab really is quite straightforward. I want to invite, and you would type in somebody's name, so Caesar. And if they're already inside of your another project directory, they will start to show up here to use. And then you can choose their access. Are they going to be editor? Are they going to be viewer? Whatever the case is. And whenever we do look at some of the members, like so for example here, this member, and when people ask for joining, whenever people ask to join projects, they would show up here. So if I had Harry asking me, hey, I want to join your project, it would show up here because he can browse some other projects too if he's part of a hub. But when we're looking at other people, we can change their permission types quite effectively. Just turn this off. So overall, let's get out of this. Let's go back to our home screen. Let's dig in to this project right here. Going through this project screen now and these thumbnails, we created this folder structure. So your office, however you want to roll out projects, you can create these folder structures. You can also bring other folder structures from one project to this one. So if you have a clean templated project and you want to start moving some folder structures over, it's simply a transfer of some of these folders. So for example, if I go back home, and let's say that this skyscraper project has some folders or files that I want to transfer up to this one, you simply will be going to that file or to that project. You'll be coming to checkbox. Sometimes it's easier to see this in list view, but whenever you hover over top of it, you'll see the blank checkbox show up. So this works on individual files or folders to which you can say, I want to move or copy. So when I want to copy this over, then you'll see the other project, which is my 2016 project, and you will choose the folder structure or the spot where you want to copy those files from your template file. And you would select it and say copy or make a new folder. Straightforward like that. And it's the same way if you have personal files in your A360 drive, you'll go into Drive and you'll say, I want to copy these folders over to my team project. Obviously, we need to correct this here. It needs to say BIM 360 team. But from Drive, you can do the same thing, copy them from one cloud to another. Now let's kind of, while we're in here, this wiki pages was really interesting. I mentioned this about project standards. You know, wikis are all about finding information. And let's say that we've got new people that come on staff and they're going to want to learn the project faster. Instead of them giving them like a handbook and giving them a program guide and all this stuff, just point them to the wiki. So for example, where are all the file locations? And you can keep a wiki that is tabular in format. And these hyperlinks can go out of the cloud to another cloud site, or it can go to a website, or it can go to, you can put whatever server information that you want in here. The other part of the wiki is you can also contain meeting notes. So your meeting minutes. So my meeting minutes from December 7th included a graphic of the project that we were working on. And this is part of meeting minutes right here, who was in attendance. And I just did some crazy things in here so you can see the potential of the wiki, highlighting some areas, changing the text colors, the formatting. It's all quite dynamic to use. And just to show you, let's create a brand new wiki page. My page. And here are all the formatting tools to which you can drive. So of course, you've got the image file. Go and grab an image. You can start doing the tabular kind of format, setting up your text and your fonts, left-hand, right-hand adjustments or alignment and so on. Quite dynamic overall. And then you would publish it. So wikis are very powerful, all-encompassing spot to find information on that project. So let's dig into the real value prop now that you've all been waiting for, and that I've been waiting for probably about a day or so now. And if you're all on the edge of your seats, here is the Revit file, native RVT file coming up in the browser. And let's take a look now at what we can do with this native Revit file in a viewing capacity. So from the top, this is Revit. This is the Revit file version 4. We've been tracking this whole time. Every time we save this exact same file name up to the cloud, it will track these changes for us. A big deal about tracking changes is knowing what changed from last time to this time. So for example, let's compare a couple of versions. Let's pit version 4 versus version 3, and you can see the viewing technology here exposes the sheets which were part of the native Revit file. Those sheets that were published from Revit as a published Revit file are here for us to interrogate. You notice it didn't necessarily give me the whole model because that was my control. If I wanted to share the whole model, I could, but my control to this one specifically was I only wanted to share the Revit sheets. So let's take a look and compare these two sheets, version 4 versus version 3. So right down here will be the introduction of this tool set. We'll get into more detail, but this is going to be what we call our overlay properties tablet. So we have green is added. This is the green item right here. When you see these are buttons. These walls kind of look like they're highlighted, and you see when I click that button, it disables those walls. Just like when I click this button for green, it disables that new change. When I see that button green, these are the two items of which it's identifying here. So somebody added these two items, and these are the true Revit property items. The information that's there is discipline specific. So what that means is for example, you can turn off these buttons. Don't show me any structural changes, any electrical changes. Don't show me any piping or plumbing changes or mechanical changes. Only show me some model changes dealing with architecture, right? So in that case, it's only going to show me the architecture. It'll hide all these other ones. Now, the real power, as much as that is fantastically, let's say fantastically good, let's take a look at something that I think is even more compelling. When I think of this, the modification type itself, and I want to look at what's been modified, this is a real true value of compare. All of these things down here, even though this is the only thing that was added, there was changes down here that we're not quite aware of until you start interrogating. Like for example, let's take a look at exam room 2-3. We are current to version 4. What did version 3 look like? And version 3 looked like that. So essentially, version 4, which is the newer version, and it shows us graphically, and it also pulls the data to say, hey man, your program now is up 36 square feet. The volume is increased by 15 cubic yards, if that's a concern. But this is a great healthcare or client program comparison now that you have access to at your fingertips without doing the math. So this is, even though this could be lonely BIM, this is just maybe architectural BIM and the other disciplines aren't there, this by itself is a great, great time saver as well as highly, highly accurate. So the compare feature, fantastic. If things had moved, like this wall and door were added, but this wall here, you know, it moved. I'm telling you, it did move from here. That's why these rooms got bigger and these ones got smaller. You have these other tools inside here like hide transformation. Moving a wall is called a transformation. Property changes. If, for example, if this door was already here, but we changed the door to a style change, that would be a property change. And then when we did shape changes, that's of course, you know, we're physically changing and adding geometry to it. So there's different types of modifications as well as different discipline modifications here. Fantastic tool and team. test it out as part of your trial, I would say. So let's close this tab because this is a brand new tab for it. Let's look at some of these other tools within Team. The markup tool, pretty standard stuff. You've got these markup freehand tools. Like I said, I've got a Surface tablet here, which actually lets me mark up quite nicely. And I want to do a freehand markup, something like that. You can come in and change the colors too, which is actually very nice. What I would recommend, if you could, and if you've got smaller teams, associate a color per user. Say, hey, I'm Caesar, I'm going to choose orange because that's my favorite color, and Harry's going to choose blue, and so on. So whenever you start doing markups by color, you can start to see very quickly who's been doing what and who's been marking up what. And you can leave yourself like a little note up here too to say this was done by Harry. But we will track some of that data for you too. So whenever I do save some of these markups, it doesn't show the data here that I'm associating. I could have put some text, but the data is right behind this overview. Really, I'm saying behind it. It's not behind it. It's just there. The overview of this file is where you start to see the comments, and the comments including things like markup and so forth. So my last markup was right here. You would click on it and you would go to it. Let's go to another markup that I did. Here's that door markup. So for example, back in November 17th, this is where the markup was made, and then following that markup, I said I wanted to add the wall and door in the corridor and move the exam room walls. So clicking this comment, it reveals the markup, it brings it to the forefront, and anybody within the project can see this thread, and then they can reply to it as well. Now, this markup only does exist on version 3. This markup will not transfer itself to version 4 because the assumption is I went in and made the change, right? So you saw when we went through that compare exercise, that change was made. So we could effectively delete this comment now if we wish, or we could leave it there for posterity. Overall, the markups and comments track themselves. The other part of the comments tool, this overview, which highlights these other functionalities are up here. This is where you can share 2 different ways. So for those people that you'd like to share the file or the link, and they're not part of the project, this is very similar to some other cloud tools where you copy this link and you have this choice of allowing viewers to download it on the computer or not. So if you turn that off, it'll only give them viewing privileges. But when you copy it, you basically are going to email it to somebody. You can also embed that link into something else if you wish. But copying it will let you share it to anybody who's on the project or not. It's entirely up to you. The live review is the piece that I highlighted during the PowerPoint presentation of today's webinar. The live review, I think, is the best thing since sliced bread because it really removes the need for me to generate a GoToMeeting, send out the meeting links. Like, this is like hot potato. Hey, I've got a design decision I need to make right now. Can I send you a link so that you can just launch it from your iPad while you're sitting at Starbucks enjoying a latte? Of course, if that's your boss, then you don't want to add that last piece to it. But copy this link, and I would copy it and send it out to somebody. This is how you invite people to it. And I could send it to my boss, and then all of a sudden I would see him log in. And once he logs in, we could use a little chat window to start doing chatting if they don't have access to a telephone at the time. Or I would just call him on his cell while we're viewing the same screen. Fantastic, fantastic feature. Can't say enough about that. Love it. So let's jump off that. That was the sharing. And of course, the download functionality. If we do want to pull this Revit file down from the cloud so that I could work on it natively within my own desktop, this is where I'm going to save it to my computer, work on it, and then I would upload it again, and it would become version 5, adding it to the set. Cool? Awesome. I love it when technology works. One more thing that I really wanted to show you. Looking at other file types too, this is really quite nice. I have an Excel file. I have a Word file. You can see right here the Word file, or sorry, there's the Word file right here. We're tracking the version. We have a native viewer built into Team. The viewer itself is just that. It only lets you view it at this point. It also lets you comment on it. So these comments will stay with this document, and it'll be part of the overview of this document for the next person that comes into our site. If we wish to edit it, this is where the edit function does a handoff. So it doesn't, you don't even need to download, well, sorry. It edits the file. When you click on it, it will launch Word on your computer, and it'll do the handoff from the cloud, seamlessly downloading it for you and opening Word at the same time. Okay? What it's saving you is going to the file, clicking on download, then you download, then you go find the file in a folder, then you open up Word, then you open up that folder, then you open the file. Right? So if you could follow that scenario, it saves you some steps. It lets you come directly to the source. It lets you open up Word automatically, or open up Word automatically. You edit the file. Then you would typically save this file to your server because it's going to be part of your standard delivery of documents. Save it to your server and then upload this again. You will need to upload this again to Team. But once it's up there, we'll track the versions for you. And if you wanted to regress, you could go back and say, no, we want to bring this second document and promote this back as the most current document. So regression is built into this too if you wish to ever do that. So two more things, because I've only got a couple minutes left. I talked about the email scenario. Whenever emails are sent, calendar invitations, let me see if I can find one here that was my calendar invitation. Well, what I wanted to say was, these are all calendar invitations. When you get a comment that somebody prescribes to you, so if I was in there and I prescribed a comment to Harry and I said, you know, when you use the @ symbol, @Harry at Microsol, he would receive this email with my comment built into it. So within his email, like Outlook, he'll receive that. He could reply all to it, and what it'll do is update the comments in Team, as well as send me an email at the same time. Again, if I want to receive that email. But the nice moral of the story is, from email, when you say reply all, it will come all the way back into Team and update the activity into that comment section. Nice feature overall. Now, the last thing that I really wanted to show is that, and this is really the upsell that I'm going to throw at you guys. If you ask yourself, hey, Caesar, is there a way that we can work directly from Revit and tie into Team, or open up files while I'm in Revit directly from Team? And of course, the answer is no. Just kidding. Of course, the answer is yes. Exclusive to Revit is the service, which is the second level that you could buy. Instead of just buying Team, you could buy Collaboration for Revit as a subscription service. And within the use of the subscription service of Collaboration for Revit, when you install it, Revit itself, when you say File Open, you'll have this new icon at the top, which lets you access Team directly, to which you can browse your projects. There's my skyscraper project, and open up the file directly from Team. That's fantastic. And then the next thing is, you can see specifically within my window here, any files that do exist up in the cloud will show you this little symbol compared to there's no symbol here. This tells me this is local to my desktop versus this file has been using the cloud and Revit so that we could all work on it collaboratively. So my engineers in New York City, my architects in Boston, those two folks can use collaboration for Revit to work simultaneously on Revit files through the team cloud. And with that highlight, I'd like to thank everybody for their time on the webinar today. If you have any questions, let's please follow up with Harry at Microsol, and he and I can get together to give you any more insights one-on-one. Happy to talk to any one of you moving forward. Thanks, everybody.